Hi, I'm Chike Coleman. That's Sanford Hess, and this is Real Reviews Home Edition, the show where we talk about movies from our homes. This week, we're taking a trip back to Zamunda with our reviews of Coming to America and Coming to America. Um, so here's the thing with me: I've never seen Coming to America until the time of this review. I had not seen it. I had no point of reference for it. This movie was directed by the legendary John Landis, who is famed for the American Werewolf in Paris film, the Thriller music video, and many, many other classics. The film stars Eddie Murphy, John Amos, I forget what her name is, Shandy, something Shandy,
Who plays Lisa? Sure.
who plays Lisa. Um, and I just look, Paul Bates, Eddie Murphy again, Arsenio Hall again, um, and many, many other funny faces. So the plot of this movie is Prince Hakeem is on the verge of his, and I can't believe I'm saying this, 21st birthday in Zamunda. And that means, by all accounts, through Zamundan history, that he is of the marrying age. And they want to set him up with this neighboring, I can't say neighboring country, but
Sure. Yeah,
neighboring
country.
town. They
No,
don't really
country.
specify it.
Yeah.
But it's a neighboring city.
Go
And
with it.
they want to set him up with a bride. He meets this woman and finds her wholly uninteresting. She doesn't stimulate his mind or his heart. So he says, "Let me go on a pilgrimage like the Mormons do and have a uh, experience of meeting and falling in love with somebody," which he uses the guise of, "Let me just sow my oats in a few places, and then I'll come back, and if I am not as interested, then I won't. I'll marry the person you want me to marry." So he goes with Arsenio's character, Simi, down to Queens because that's where he thinks the African queens are going to be. And, you know, after being royal for literally 2.5 seconds and getting all his clothes stolen, he realizes he probably should blend in and dress like a commoner. Through this, he eventually gets a job at McDowell's. Not McDonald's, McDowell's. This is a, and I'm sorry to say this, rip off version of McDonald's with different names with Dow attached to it. Um, and essentially, there he meets Lisa, a conscientious, kind woman who seems to be friendly and genuine and sweet, and he finds her interesting. Too bad for him, though, that she's dating a character played by Eric LaSalle. Uh, Also in the mix is Lisa's sister, who thinks Simi is the actual uh, Prince of Zamunda. And hijinks ensue. So this movie is over 30 years old, and I'd never seen it before. And by many people, it is considered a classic. So to give this review, I've got to put my critic hat on. I did not know what to expect from this movie. I didn't know the references, I didn't know anything. I hated this movie. It's awful. It drags so much. The jokes are so tired and shameless that I'm just like, what am I watching? Why is this supposed to be funny? Like, other than him saying F you to the neighbors when he was like
In,
trying to speak their lingo,
yeah.
and Paul Bates' Queen to Be song at the very beginning, I didn't laugh at any of this stuff. Maybe it's because I've aged past the point where this slightly childish humor would hit me in an interesting place, but I didn't like any of it. I didn't find it interesting or even remotely culturally relevant today. I don't know. Am I not the demographic for this movie? Is my black movie card going to be rescinded for not liking Coming to America? I don't know. But for whatever reason, I didn't find Eddie Murphy the least bit funny in this movie. Arsenio was interesting, but he wasn't as he was funnier than Eddie, but he wasn't really laugh out loud funny. I expected to be laughing every 5 minutes with this film. I did not. Instead, I laughed every now and then, like the barbershop scene with all the different versions of Eddie and Arsenio playing different characters. Great! Amazing! Good comedy. Every other thing just felt like bachelors making fun of women or bachelors observing women in their natural habitat in a different culture than what he was used to. None of it was illuminating. I did love James Earl Jones' brief presence in the movie and that of the woman who played his wife, both showing that you can have strong male and female role models as adults who don't chastise your dreams. Great characters. But it wasn't shown enough in this movie for it to be emotionally relevant or comedically funny. So, Sanford, with that said, what is your opinion on Coming to America?
Wow. All right, I can't top that. I liked it. I mean, I've seen this movie. I saw it when it came out. I actually watched this probably about a year ago or so. We watched it with our son just to show him a comedy classic, and then I watched it again after I had seen the second one. So what I was struck by on watching it, because I do like this movie. I want to clash with you on this one because I do enjoy it. What I enjoyed about this movie was an appreciation for the ongoing joke. So for example, when Eddie Murphy is Prince Hakeem and he's meeting his bride for a first time, and there's this ongoing musical dance and it just keeps on going, and then the Paul Bates song starts up and you're like, okay, oh, that's kind of funny, and then it like keeps on going. I really appreciated that. This movie has a pace that you don't see in comedies anymore because everything has to be bang bang bang, laugh laugh laugh, constant. This movie has more of a 1980s pace. It's slower and luxurious, and it has what I think is more depth than most comedies. So I appreciated that. Now I will tell you this: Eddie Murphy is not the nonstop, comedic force that he is in other movies around the same time. I mean, John Landis also directed him in Trading Places. And around this time he had a string of hits like Beverly Hills Cop and Beverly Hills Cop 2, and where he was like the wisecracking, constant force. In this movie, he's remarkably restrained as a character, almost the straight man. I mean, not
Yes.
quite, but almost, right?
Yes.
And allows the other characters around him to share the stage. It's one of the few Eddie Murphy movies where it's really not all Eddie Murphy all the time. So I appreciated that about this. And while I agree with you, this movie is not laugh out loud, uproariously funny, it is good. It is quality in what it's trying to achieve. And to me, this movie has more of a heart and more of a moral than a lot of other comedies that you see these days. Including, oh, I'm giving myself away, including the second Coming to America. But I really appreciated that. I appreciated this movie had a message. This movie had a look, you should love somebody from the inside out. You should, that had an entire subtext about natural hair versus the, Jerry curl hair. It had a lot of positive messages that it was getting across. And you have to, I mean, in my mind, it came out at a time where there were not a lot of messages that were positive messages aimed at the African American audience.
I would
So
agree. And the messages are the thing that I think I gravitated toward when watching this movie.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
and,
I mean, I
and, that,
appreciate that. So, and then the
and
other
that's what I
thing,
found more meaningful about the movie as a whole.
yeah.
Even when I wasn't laughing, I'm like, oh, okay. They're reinforcing these messages that are now not heard at all today.
So, do you think that one of the reasons you didn't enjoy it was number one because it was overblown before you saw it?
I think
Or
if it hadn't become such a cult classic and you said, "Hey, let's sit down, watch Coming to America," I would have enjoyed it more. But
okay.
because everybody had been talking about it for years and years and years, and were shocked that I had not seen it, I was like, I'm expecting to just have a good old time with this movie, and it did not happen for me. To me, it's mediocre at best, but best because of the messages.
Well, yeah,
And
and
there are still things you can quote from it too, like of course, forgive me, audience, sexual chocolate, um, and any of the lines by the Jewish man in the barber shop. Just
just
any of them
just
are
the guy's
hilarious.
talking about just the great boxers, and yeah,
Yeah,
this movie,
Muhammad Ali would whip something Listen's ass. What are you talking about? There's no question. He'd be on the floor. I don't know. Just all the voices are like that. To me, is the highlight of Coming to America. But
absolutely. I mean, this movie almost in some ways it was just a reason for them to put on all the makeup and create those characters.
I agree. So not a strong effort, in my opinion.
Well,
Which
now
is
you touched on something else that I want to agree with, which it's the problem with all these movies from the '80s. It's the misogyny is there. I mean, this one actually lifted up women a little more than your standard
yes.
1980s fare, but still, it's the women, the female characters are a sideline at best. They're to queen to be or a wife to be.
They're joke central, and it's not the way it should be.
Right. Right. And so many of these movies, they feel dated in that way. And that's an unfortunate thing about watching these movies from 30 years ago now is that they just don't hold up. And or they hold up but they just you feel almost bad for some of the jokes in there.
Yeah. Um. So, would you recommend this movie?
Yes, absolutely, undoubtedly, because I think it is I mean, Eddie Murphy was a so let me say this. I grew up during the era of Eddie Murphy's heyday, and I don't even know if you can put somebody up there these days who is as much of a star as he was at the time. I mean, he was coming off Saturday Night Live. He had a string of hit movies. He had comedy tapes. Weren't even albums. I had cassettes of Eddie Murphy
Mhm.
that he was the man, and this movie came out probably sometime in the middle of his stand-up movies. And I think it is family friendly Eddie Murphy in a way that very few of his other movies were, although he went on to make a lot more family friendly movies like The Nutty Professor and some other stuff like that. But I just think this movie holds its own as capturing him at his prime.
Even though I don't like this movie, I'm gonna do something that you would be shocked by. I'm gonna recommend it. I don't like it at all, but this is a movie for everybody else, even if it's not for me. There's still funny bits in there. It has a positive message that I think is still relevant today. Even though I don't like it, I know everybody else will.
And it's a movie you can watch with your mom and well, except for one or two scenes. You can watch it with your mom and your grandma. I mean, pretty much everybody's going to enjoy this movie. I mean, we showed it to my son when he was probably 10, and
Hmm.
it's not incredibly inappropriate, although there are some bad words. But he's in Queens, so you got, so you got to take that into account. All right. Well,
So,
with that being said,
from one trip to Queens to another, the second movie that we're talking about today is Coming to America, and that is the sequel directed by Craig Brewer, starring most of the original cast and a few questionable additions in the form of Leslie Jones, Tracy Morgan, Morgan Freeman at random,
Wesley
Paul Bates
Snipes.
returns. I'm not even gonna bother mentioning the son's name
Oh yeah.
or his love interest because I just don't care about either of them. Um, but essentially, the story for Coming to America is that Now, well, technically at the start of this film, still Prince Hakim, who is transitioned into becoming King Hakim, because his father dies, um, finds out that during his initial pilgrimage to Queens, he had a one night stand with someone from when he was interviewing ladies to talk to see if he could find depth. Um, and he goes to visit the son to try and see if he would be interested in becoming heir to the throne. I'm going to stop the whole plot summary there because that's all you really need to know. I'm so angry. Give me a second, audience. I just need to put my words together. The sheer fact that the plot of the movie is basically based on a sexual assault of another human being is ridiculous to me. Nothing about that is funny. Nothing about that is comical. I think it's abhorrent. And that's where the movie basically starts with showing us a flashback of what happened to Hakeem. None of that is appropriate for anyone to watch, first and foremost. Uh, they bring back a lot of the classic bits from the first film that when you see them, you smile and you laugh because guess what? Those are your secret in your head favorite pieces of the movie that are being revisited, which is great. You know, you see James Earl Jones get celebrated before his death in the movie, which is amazing because you have, you know, Salt and Pepper showing up. You got Morgan Freeman showing up, and it's a big party. You've also got uh, the general from that neighboring village from the first movie finally showing his face. And guess who it is? Is the funniest person in this movie, Wesley freaking Snipes. He is the best part of this movie.
Totally agree. Totally agree about that.
There's no question in my mind. Just watching him walk is hilarious. And then, of course, through some details through the shaman, and of course, Simi returns. They find out that King Hakim has a lost son, which does not sit well with his wife or his three daughters, one of which is trying to make her case to ascend to the throne after King Hakim dies. So, as I've illuminated to, there are several moments in this movie that reference coming to America. And all those moments are absolutely fantastic. They're what I live for in this movie. Having said that, any of the new additions that are in this movie mean absolutely nothing to me. They don't add anything to the plot. It's everything you would imagine. They get Jermaine Fowler to play some form of a, forgive me, audience, underprivileged kid who didn't have the life he should have had. Hakeem feeling bad about that, but also at the same time kind of making fun of that, which again, wholly uncalled for when it is your biological flesh and blood. This movie is soulless because it goes back on every promise the first movie made. I hate this movie because it gives us all these funny things to like. Even Paul Bates singing improves between the first and the second movie. And that is not enough to keep me from hating it because it's paint by numbers comedy. Joke, bit of story, joke, bit of story, joke, bit of story through the whole thing. Nobody really grows as a person through their experience within this movie. Nobody goes through any sort of emotional pilgrimage of respect. Everything goes the way you think it will. You don't even have to think about it for it to happen. And the new characters added, as I said, are lifeless and don't need to be there. This sequel would have been better off had it just stuck to using the original cast and keeping Wesley Snipes and having it be a turf war movie where his eldest daughter finds a way for them to make peace. Much better movie, shorter runtime, and funnier comedy could come from that, especially if you have Hakeem visiting the neighboring village.
More Wesley Snipes. Yes.
All of that would have worked amazingly for this film had they gone that direction, but they didn't. And the audience learns nothing about these characters that they waited 30 years to see. So, having said that, Sanford, that's my opinion. What's
Yeah,
yours on Coming to America?
I'm going to agree with you on almost everything you said. I mean, this movie falls into the trap that so many sequels fall into, which is we're going to do the same thing again, just bigger. So the first one had musical numbers. This one has 5 musical numbers. The first one had, the wedding scene, or has, the scene of a date of going and having the, God, I'm blanking on this, has the scene of going and meeting all the women. And this one's like, oh, we're going to revisit that. We're going to show the same thing and we're going to add to it. So I agree with you that the problem with this movie is it falls into that trap of trying to redo the first movie again. I mean, there are so many better ways to make a sequel. Now, it's a rare thing for a comedy sequel to exceed the original. Very rare. Very,
I
very
mean,
rare.
Rush Hour 2 and 3 did that very well, though, in fairness.
Yeah, I mean, even last year, we both agreed that Bill and Ted Face the Music was one of the best movies of the year. And, what succeeded so well because of it sort of meta commenting on the original as opposed to just regurgitating the original.
And it had an emotional core.
Right. So it can be done, but it's really difficult. And so many sequels fall into this trap. And this one does too. Now, that being said, I strongly believe with all films that you should judge them on their genre. So this movie as a comedy sequel,
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. You're probably going to ask me if I'd recommend it. I would recommend it if you really enjoyed Coming to America and wanted to watch the sequel. Sure, why not? It's not really a waste of 2 hours. But is this movie exceeding the sequel?
Not
is
at
it
all.
exceeding the original? No, not on
No,
any level. Is it more fun? No. Is it
no.
funnier? Only in the sense that the humor is
The
more.
original bits get better because you know what they are.
Yeah, but also it's a little more of sort of modern speed of humor. So, some of the jokes are coming a little more fast and furious. But ultimately, yeah, I mean, now I will say I enjoyed Leslie Jones. She's playing Leslie Jones's character, which she plays all the time now. It seems to be sort of her one note performance, but it works here. I mean, the character works
I
in this
don't think it
context.
works.
I I didn't like Tracy Morgan in this. I just kind of But with you, I mean, Wesley Snipes was a revelation in Dolomite, right? I mean, playing that sort of washed up actor who,
Yeah.
he got to direct Dolomite. He was amazing in that. And I'm so glad that they created this role for him here. Cause like you said, he's fabulous. And the 6 or 7 minutes that he's in this movie are by far and away some of the best moments of it.
I mean,
So
even when he's getting knocked out by one of the Dodgers, it's amazing.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, and then my final complaint about this movie is not enough of it takes place in America. I mean, probably the best moments of humor in the first movie are the ways that it found to comment on America through the outsider view of it. Too much of this movie takes place in Zamunda.
They should have called it Coming to Wakanda. Or not Wakanda,
Yeah,
Zamunda.
yeah. That would actually have been not only a better name, but easier to clarify with other people. Have you seen? You know. So yeah, but ultimately, all right. So
We're coming back to America.
but yeah, yeah. So ultimately, Chike. So let's wrap this up for our audience. Do we recommend Coming to America?
I don't recommend it, but if you want to look at all the funny original bits given a little bit more of an oomph and an extended life, because there are some great hits. Half of them are in that original trailer that they showed for Coming to America, but the other half are nice little unique gems that you have to get to really be pacified for the entire runtime.
I'm with you. Yeah. This audience, I would say we can tepidly recommend based on those couple of caveats, but otherwise, yeah. Just
But again, Prince Hakeem getting date raped is not funny. Why is that the reason you put that in the movie? No, nothing about that is any kind of funny or amusing or enlightening at all. Unless you had him discussing the trauma of it because he wakes up and finds out that, oh my God.
well,
You know,
that would be a bit of a downer in a comedy.
it would be, but the wife could be sympathetic and be given more to do because she's not given jack to do in this movie.
Right. Except
And
lock
she
him out of
has
the
all
bedroom.
girls. How is that a thing?
Okay. All right. Whew. Spoke your piece.
Having said that, audience, we would love for you to um, take a trip to a better version of Zamunda called Wakanda and just watch Black Panther instead. You'd feel more supported, you'd feel more seen and heard than watching Coming to America. With that said, next week,
Yes. Tell us.
we are going to be with a league of sorts. But the
There's no
question is, are
crying
we
in baseball.
watching two different leagues or just one? You'll have to find out next week and see our review. Until then, we'll see you guys next time. Enjoy your time at the movies. Bye, guys.